The snow cracked beneath heavy paws, and silence shattered as a predator lunged. Evelyn gasped, clutching her chest, the echo of snapping bones cutting through the valley like a scream. Daniel shouted, "Run!" His voice fractured against the howl of the wind. The white ground stained crimson as prey, thrashed in futile defiance, breath torn from the frozen air. No warning, no mercy, just the sudden truth of survival. Frost lashed against Evelyn's eyes, blinding her, yet she staggered forward. Fear clawed her lungs, and Daniel's hand gripped hers as if tethering her to life. Behind them, the growl deepened, closer now, a sound too primal to resist. Evelyn whispered, "It's too late," but Daniel dragged her on, his face pale with defiance. The valley swallowed them, and snowflakes fell softly, covering the blood as though hiding the memory. The wind screamed like a chorus of the damned as Evelyn staggered, lungs tearing for air. Daniel pulled her onward, his grip firm though his voice broke. "Don't stop," he said, though his body betrayed exhaustion. Behind them, the echo of the predator's growl rolled across the valley, carrying dread like thunder before a storm. Evelyn glanced back, her eyes hollow with terror, and saw nothing but shifting snow, yet the silence grew more suffocating than sound. The valley itself felt alive, watching, waiting for the inevitable collapse. Daniel forced his legs to keep moving, each step cracking through ice like breaking glass. Evelyn whispered, "I can't," and the words slipped away with the storm. Daniel leaned close, his voice raw. "Then I'll carry you." Their shapes blurred against the endless white, swallowed by a world that offered no mercy. Snow hissed under Evelyn's boots as she stumbled into a hollow where wind dropped for only a heartbeat. Her chest heaved, breath rasping like torn paper. Daniel stood before her, jaw clenched tight, listening for movement beyond the white wall. His voice broke into the silence. "It's circling us." Evelyn froze, her blood running colder than the storm around her. A shadow passed across the ridge, too quick, too silent, like the valley itself moving against them. Evelyn said, "Why won't it let go?" Her words dissolved into the freezing wind, unheard by all but Daniel. He answered, "Because we are weak." The silence shattered with a crack of ice, the ground shifting beneath them. Evelyn's scream rose, swallowed by snow, and the valley echoed it back, a hollow reminder of frailty. The ground buckled with a sound like breaking bones. Evelyn collapsed, snow swallowing her to the knees. Daniel fell beside her, his arm shielding her from shards of ice breaking loose. Above them, the ridge cracked, white dust tumbling like a curtain hiding death. Evelyn cried, "It's falling," her voice barely a whisper drowned in thunderous collapse. Daniel forced her up, shouting, "Move!" Their bodies collided against the storm, scraping skin raw as they fought through the shifting snow. Rocks groaned, ice snapping, the valley itself betraying them. Evelyn's fingers clawed at Daniel's coat, terror eclipsing her breath. For a fleeting second, silence returned, broken only by their hearts hammering like drums of war. Then came another crack, closer, merciless, promising the valley would not forgive. Snow rained down in violent sheets as Evelyn and Daniel stumbled into a narrow ravine. The world closed around them, walls of ice rising higher with every step. Evelyn gasped, "We trapped." Daniel pressed his palm against frozen stone, his eyes sharp despite exhaustion. "No," he said, "we keep going until the end." His voice was not strength, but defiance against inevitability. The ravine roared with echoes of collapsing snow, distant growls still chasing their heels. Evelyn's breath faltered, her body trembling as if ready to surrender. Daniel gripped her shoulders, forcing her eyes to meet his. "You live," he said, though fear hollowed his voice. The storm howled louder, drowning their words, until only their shapes remained, swallowed by shadow. The storm eased for a moment, and Evelyn collapsed against the icy wall, chest heaving as though her ribs might break. Daniel crouched beside her, scanning the horizon, his eyes sharpened by fear. "It's not gone," he muttered, his voice carrying the weight of certainty. Evelyn shook her head, pressing her frozen hands against her face, whispering, "Why us?" The valley gave no answer, only silence pressing harder than any roar. In that silence, Daniel reached for her hand again, firm but gentle, reminding her of their fragile thread of hope. His grip steadied her, trembling, though she felt as brittle as shattered glass. The world seemed intent on stripping them away, piece by piece. Evelyn closed her eyes, whispering, "If I fall, don't wait." Daniel's jaw tightened. "If you fall," he said, "I fall with you." Their bond grew heavy, their fate sealed by loyalty. A faint cry echoed across the valley, piercing through the storm like the sound of something lost. Evelyn froze, her head snapping upward. "Did you hear that?" she asked, voice raw with dread and wonder. Daniel's brow furrowed, listening before the sound came again. Fragile, desperate, not predator, but something small. Evelyn whispered, "A child?" Her words carried hope, though she knew better. They followed the sound into a hollow beneath an overhang of ice, where shadows deepened and air thickened with frost. A small fawn lay curled, trembling, barely alive, its breath thin against the frozen air. Evelyn knelt, her voice soft. "It's dying." Daniel's shoulders tensed, torn between mercy and futility. "We can't save it," he said. Evelyn placed her hand gently on the creature, tears brimming in her eyes. "Then I'll die knowing I tried." The fawn shivered violently, every breath a battle it seemed destined to lose. Evelyn whispered soothing words, her tears freezing on her cheeks. "You are not alone," she murmured, though her voice cracked with despair. Daniel turned away, jaw locked, unable to watch the fragile creature fading. "It will slow us down," he said, his words breaking against the weight of her gaze. Evelyn stroked the fawn's side, her hands trembling, desperate for warmth she could not give. Snow fell thicker now, muffling sound, hiding them deeper within the valley's indifference. Evelyn lifted her eyes, pleading, "Please let us keep it." Daniel's silence was answer enough, but still he stood guard, his figure unmovable against the storm. The fawn's fragile whimper carved deeper into Evelyn's heart, binding her to its fate. The storm swelled again, and Daniel stepped closer, his voice sharp, though it trembled with restraint. "It's dying, Evelyn. We can't save everything." Evelyn's hands shook as she clutched the fawn tighter, her body a shield against the cold. "But we can try," she cried, desperation unraveling her words. Daniel reached for her shoulder, his grip firm, urging her to see the truth. "Every step we take matters. If we stay, none of us leave." Evelyn's eyes burned with defiance, though her tears froze before falling. "If this valley takes me, it will take me as someone who did not abandon." Daniel stared at her, the storm reflecting in his eyes, a war between survival and compassion raging within him. For that moment, he saw her not as fragile but unbreakable. The fawn's breath slowed, each exhale a fragile cloud in the frozen air. Evelyn pressed her forehead against its fur, whispering words only it could hear. Daniel closed his eyes, the silence crushing him more than the storm. At last, the small body went still, surrendering to the valley's cold embrace. Evelyn's cry broke through the night, soft but piercing, a sound that carried grief deeper than the growl of any predator. She laid the fawn gently on the snow, covering it with her torn scarf, hands trembling as if sealing a promise. Daniel touched her shoulder lightly, no words left to give, only the silent bond of shared loss. Snow fell thicker, erasing the small mound, hiding death beneath its beauty. Evelyn rose slowly, her face pale but fierce, her heart now bound to survival by love, not fear. The storm quieted, but silence carried no peace. Evelyn pressed forward through deep snow, her steps heavy with grief, her heart unwilling to release the fawn. Daniel followed close, his eyes scanning the horizon where shadows stirred. The growl of the predator returned, faint but sharp as a blade through fog. Evelyn whispered, "It's hunting us still." Daniel's jaw tightened, every muscle braced for the chase yet to come. Their world narrowed to white walls, cold breath, and the beat of fear hammering like drums. Every sound was louder now, snow shifting, branches cracking, air trembling. Evelyn's hands shook as she clutched her coat tighter, muttering, "I won't let it take me." Daniel glanced at her, voice flat with resolve. "Then we fight." His words hung heavy, a promise of defiance against an enemy neither could escape. The silence shattered when a snarl tore across the valley. Evelyn froze, her breath sharp, eyes darting wildly through the snow haze. Daniel pulled her behind a fractured boulder, his hand firm on her shoulder. The predator's shadow moved swiftly across the ridge, circling, relentless, testing their fear. Evelyn whispered, "It won't stop." Her voice cracked, splintering like ice beneath weight. Daniel peered over the rock, sweat freezing on his brow, muttering, "It knows we're weak." The sound of paws crushed snow closer, circling them like chains tightening. Evelyn's chest heaved, her whispers spilling into the storm. "Why doesn't it kill us already?" Daniel's gaze hardened, his voice a growl of his own, "Because it wants us broken first." Fear seeped into every breath, the predator feeding on their despair before striking. The predator lunged from the storm, teeth flashing, and Evelyn screamed, falling backward into the snow. Daniel swung the branch with all his strength, striking its side, the sound echoing like thunder against the rocks. The beast snarled, shaken but not defeated, its eyes burning with hunger and rage. Evelyn scrambled, her fingers tearing through ice, desperate to rise. Daniel shouted, "Move," his voice breaking as he pushed her aside. Snow erupted beneath the predator's weight, each step closer, its breath steaming like fire in frozen air. Evelyn gasped, "It's stronger than us." Daniel's muscles trembled, grip failing, but his stance remained firm. "Then it will bleed," he growled. The storm swallowed their cries, leaving only the sound of survival clashing against inevitability. The branch snapped with a sickening crack, splinters flying, leaving Daniel weaponless. The predator lunged again, its claws raking the snow where Evelyn had been moments before. She stumbled, gasping, scrambling to her feet, blood staining her sleeve from a shallow cut. Daniel stepped between her and death, his body trembling with exhaustion but unbroken. "Stay behind me," he barked, though his voice shook with strain. Evelyn's heart pounded like a war drum, fear and guilt twisting together. "You can't fight it alone," she cried. Daniel stood firm, eyes locked on the predator, his breath ragged but defiant. "I was never alone," he said. The beast circled, calculating, hunger glowing in its eyes. The valley held its breath, as though watching the fragile line between survival and destruction unravel. The predator leapt once more, but this time Daniel braced, grabbing a jagged shard of ice from the ground. With a desperate cry, he drove it forward, striking the beast's flank. A roar split the night, pain shaking the valley. Evelyn pulled Daniel back, both collapsing into the snow as the predator reeled, its rage unbroken. Blood spattered across the snow, a stark red against endless white. Evelyn whispered, "It won't stop." Daniel coughed, his voice hoarse but steady, "Neither will we." Their faces pale, their breaths shallow, they clung to each other as the storm roared around them. The predator retreated into shadow, its eyes still burning, promising its return. The valley gave no comfort, only silence heavy with the knowledge that this fight had only begun. Snow settled into uneasy silence after the clash, but the predator did not return immediately. Evelyn pressed against Daniel, heart pounding like it might burst through her chest. Daniel's eyes never left the shadows, his breath sharp as knives. The valley was watching, waiting, holding its secrets. Evelyn whispered, "Why hasn't it killed us?" Her words hung in the cold unanswered. Then a faint sound broke the stillness, not a growl, but a cry. High, thin, desperate. Daniel frowned, shaken. "That wasn't for us." Evelyn's eyes widened, realization dawning. They weren't alone, not in the way they believed. The predator wasn't just hunting. It was protecting, feeding, fighting a war no different from theirs. The snow held its truth beneath the silence. They moved carefully toward the sound, every step sinking deep into powder. Evelyn's breath caught when her eyes fell upon a hollow carved by the storm. Within lay two wolf pups, shivering, their fur thin against the winter's cruelty. Evelyn covered her mouth, tears freezing before they could fall. Daniel muttered, "It hunts for them." His voice cracked under the weight of truth. Evelyn knelt, gaze softening as she whispered, "It's not just our lives." The pups whimpered, curling into each other, fragile sparks in a merciless world. The truth cut deeper than claws. Predator and prey were bound by the same fate. Survival demanded blood. Daniel's grip tightened around his coat, as if holding back guilt. Evelyn whispered, "We are no different." A rustle of snow announced the predator's return. The wolf emerged from shadow, blood staining its muzzle, its body battered yet unbroken. Evelyn gasped, shielding herself, but the beast did not lunge. Instead, it lowered its head toward the hollow. A mother's instinct stronger than hunger. Daniel raised the shard of ice, arm trembling, but hesitated as he watched her nuzzle her young. Evelyn whispered, "She's no monster." Daniel's grip faltered, torn between survival and truth. The wolf's amber eyes met theirs, not with malice, but warning, "Stay back or be destroyed." Evelyn's chest heaved, a revelation carving into her bones. Death was not cruelty, only necessity. The valley's law was absolute, but its justice was shared. The wolf growled low, but not in hunger. It was warning them away from her young. Evelyn's tears blurred her vision, her voice breaking. "She's just like us." Daniel clenched his jaw, every instinct screaming to strike, yet his heart anchored by the sight of fragile lives clinging to their mother. The truth burned through the storm. Survival was never about cruelty, only sacrifice. Evelyn reached slowly, laying her hand on Daniel's wrist, forcing his arm down. "Let her live," she whispered. Daniel's breath shook, his body resisting, but his eyes softened as he finally lowered the shard. The wolf stood her ground, unmoving, amber eyes glowing with defiance and fear. In that moment, predator and prey were not enemies, only survivors bound by the same law. The valley fell silent as the choice was made. Daniel dropped the shard, its edge sinking into snow, the sound faint but final. Evelyn exhaled, trembling, her breath shaking like a prayer. The wolf stepped back into the hollow, curling around her pups, shielding them from the storm. Evelyn whispered, "She only wanted to live." Daniel placed a hand on her shoulder, his voice heavy with exhaustion. "So do we." The storm howled once more, but the air carried a new weight, understanding. They turned away, each step harder than the last, their bodies marked by wounds but their souls reshaped. Behind them, the wolf's eyes lingered, not in hatred but in warning. The valley no longer felt like enemy or ally. It was truth itself, and truth was absolute. The storm's scream sharpened into a howl as night devoured the valley. Evelyn stumbled through chest-deep snow, her body near collapse, breath tearing from her throat. Daniel pulled her forward, his face pale, lips cracked, eyes hollow yet fierce. A new sound split the storm, not wolf, not wind, but the groan of ice breaking beneath them. Evelyn gasped, "The ground is moving." Daniel dragged her toward the ridge, shouting, "Run!" The snow split open behind them, a fracture spreading like lightning, the earth itself becoming enemy. Evelyn's legs buckled, terror choking her. Daniel yanked her upward, his voice breaking. "You live, or I die here." The valley answered with thunder, collapsing ice chasing their heels. Death was no longer shadow. It was the ground itself. The fracture widened, swallowing trees and snow alike, a chasm devouring the valley. Evelyn screamed as her foot slipped, body jerking toward the abyss. Daniel lunged, seizing her wrist, veins straining as he held her against the pull. "Don't let go," she cried, nails digging into his coat. His teeth clenched, every muscle quivering. "I won't." Snow crumbled beneath his knees, threatening to drag them both into darkness. The storm howled, mocking their struggle. Evelyn's tears froze mid-fall, her voice ragged. "You can't hold me." Daniel roared back, his grip unyielding. I can. His words were not strength but defiance. With a desperate heave, he pulled her onto solid ground. Both collapsed, gasping, faces pale with terror, yet alive by threads. The valley had demanded blood, but not yet theirs. They rose unsteadily, but the storm offered no mercy. From the shadows, the rival wolf emerged, leaner, hungrier, eyes burning with fury. Evelyn staggered back, whispering, "Not again." Daniel stepped in front, fists clenched, body trembling with exhaustion yet ready. The wolf circled them, teeth bared, saliva steaming in the freezing air. Daniel growled, "This ends here." Evelyn's voice cracked, pleading, "We can't fight anymore." The beast lunged, snow exploding as claws slashed. Daniel threw himself forward, body colliding with the wolf, both tumbling violently. Evelyn screamed, rushing toward them, her hands grabbing at anything to pull Daniel free. Blood sprayed across the snow, crimson streaks staining white purity. Daniel roared through pain, his voice shattering the storm. "I won't let it take us." Daniel's cry ripped through the storm as the wolf's claws raked across his side. Evelyn grabbed a jagged shard of ice, her body shaking as she lunged forward, slamming it into the beast's shoulder. The wolf howled, thrashing, blood mixing with snow. Evelyn screamed, her voice filled with fury. "Leave him!" Daniel gasped, clutching his side, his strength failing. The wolf snarled, staggering but still fierce, its eyes burning with hunger that would not end. Evelyn stood between it and Daniel, arms shaking, weapon raised, though her body faltered. "Come for me," she hissed. Her defiance was raw, fragile, yet unbroken. Storm howled around them as though the valley itself roared approval. The wolf crouched low, preparing for one final strike, a moment suspended between survival and ruin. The wolf lunged, a blur of fur and rage, but Evelyn struck downward with all her strength. The shard pierced deep, the beast collapsing with a final roar, blood spreading across snow like ink spilled on paper. Silence fell, broken only by Evelyn's sobs. She dropped the weapon, falling to her knees, her chest heaving with grief and exhaustion. Daniel pulled himself up, his hand trembling as it touched her shoulder. "You saved us," he whispered, voice weak but filled with awe. Evelyn's eyes, red-rimmed and hollow, lifted toward him, whispering, "No, I just survived." The storm quieted, snow falling softer now, blanketing crimson with white. Yet beneath its beauty lay bones and blood, the valley's eternal truth. Snow fell quieter now, but silence pressed harder than the storm. Evelyn walked slowly, each step dragging, her body hollowed by exhaustion. Daniel leaned against her, blood seeping through his coat, his strength fading with every breath. "We're still here," she whispered, though her voice broke like thin ice. His lips parted, words trembling out. "For now." The valley stretched endless before them, white and merciless, covering blood and bones alike. Evelyn's mind replayed the cries, the wolf's eyes, the broken fight, as if the valley etched them into her soul. The snow beneath her feet seemed less ground, more grave, burying everything they lost. She pressed Daniel's arm tighter, refusing to let him fall. "We don't stop," she said, a vow sharp against silence. They reached a fallen tree, buried half in snow, its trunk forming a fragile shelter. Evelyn lowered Daniel gently, his body trembling from cold and blood loss. He forced a smile, his lips cracked, whispering, "You saved me." Evelyn shook her head, tears freezing on her lashes. "No, we saved each other." Daniel coughed, his breath thin, his hand weakly gripping hers. The wind howled above, carrying distant echoes like voices lost in time. Evelyn pressed her forehead to his, whispering, "We live because we must, not because we deserve it." He gave no reply, only a weary gaze that carried both gratitude and pain. The snow drifted higher against the tree, sealing them in a tomb of white silence. Time blurred into the white horizon, every second a battle against surrender. Evelyn's body screamed for rest, but she forced herself up, gathering scraps of frozen bark for a feeble fire. Her hands shook violently, frostbite clawing at her fingers, yet she struck stone against stone until sparks flickered. Daniel watched, his eyes glassy, murmuring, "You're stronger than you know." Evelyn bit her lip, holding flame to bark, whispering, "No, I'm just not ready to die." The fire flared weak, barely touching the cold, but its light wrapped around them like fragile hope. Outside, the valley groaned with shifting ice, reminding them no fire could hold it back for long. Evelyn closed her eyes briefly, knowing survival was never a victory, only a delay. The fire dwindled as quickly as it rose, swallowed by the storm's breath. Evelyn wrapped her coat tighter around Daniel, ignoring her own shivering body. His eyes fluttered, lips moving weakly. "If I fall, don't stop walking." Evelyn shook her head violently, pressing her hand to his chest. "Don't you dare leave me." The words were a command, a prayer, a plea. The storm outside eased into eerie calm, as if the valley paused to watch their fate. Evelyn's strength quivered, but her resolve burned brighter than flame. She whispered, "We live, Daniel, not for mercy, not for hope. We live because we must." He gave a faint nod, eyes closing, not in surrender but in fragile trust. Snow pressed heavier, silence swallowing all but their breaths. Morning broke faintly, pale light bleeding across the horizon. Evelyn stirred, her body stiff, frost clinging to every seam of her coat. Daniel still breathed, shallow but steady, his chest rising like fragile tides. Evelyn exhaled, relief trembling her voice. She pulled herself upright, staring across the endless valley where snow buried every trace of struggle, every drop of blood. The wolf's cries had faded, the storm hushed, but memory clung like scars carved into her bones. Evelyn whispered, "This valley hides the dead and spares the stubborn." Her eyes narrowed, her jaw set, resolve burning. She pulled Daniel's arm over her shoulder again, standing despite her pain. With each step forward, snow covered their past, yet their survival carved into the silence remained. Snow stretched endless, blinding under pale morning light. Evelyn staggered forward, her body aching, every breath a knife. Daniel leaned against her, half-conscious, his steps dragging like anchors. She whispered, "One more step," though her voice cracked with exhaustion. The valley was silent, yet its silence screamed louder than storms. Their footprints trailed behind, soon to vanish under falling snow. Evelyn's chest burned with the weight of unseen eyes. Not predator now, but the valley itself, eternal judge. She muttered, "It hides them all, every death, every struggle." Daniel groaned softly, the sound frail, but alive. Evelyn gripped him tighter, her face carved with resolve. In that fragile moment, survival became not triumph but defiance, the echo of lives refusing to vanish without trace. They paused near a jagged ridge where broken branches jutted from snow like bones. Evelyn's gaze lingered on the silence, her mind flashing with images of the fawn, the wolf, the rival, all swallowed by this merciless world. She whispered, "Every death feeds another." Daniel's lips parted, his breath shallow, answering, "Even ours if it comes." Evelyn closed her eyes, pain cutting deeper than the cold. "Then let our fight be remembered," she said, though she knew the valley remembered nothing. Their words vanished into air, fragile and fleeting, swallowed like countless before. Evelyn pressed forward again, her steps heavy, but her spirit unbroken. Each movement carved a fragile rebellion against the eternal silence. As they moved deeper, a crow circled above, black wings cutting across the white sky. Evelyn raised her head, following its path, her voice hoarse. "It waits for us." Daniel managed a faint laugh, broken but defiant. "Then it will wait longer." The bird's cry echoed sharp, carrying across the valley like a reminder of mortality. Evelyn's jaw tightened, each step more deliberate, more furious. "We're not carrion yet," she whispered. The crow vanished into horizon mist, leaving silence heavier than before. Daniel's hand brushed hers weakly, their fingers intertwining, trembling with cold. but strong with bond. Their march became an oath, fragile bodies resisting the fate the valley demanded. Every breath, every step, was the echo of defiance. The ridge narrowed into a ledge, overlooking endless snowfields. Evelyn halted, chest heaving, staring into the vast emptiness where storm and silence reigned. Daniel leaned against her shoulder, his voice faint but certain. "This valley never ends." Evelyn shook her head slowly, whispering, "No, it ends when we do." Her words carried like prayer and curse both. The weight of death hung thick in the air, but so too did the fragile spark of will. Snow fell gently, covering the blood on Daniel's coat, hiding every trace of the fight. Evelyn muttered, "It buries the bones, but it cannot bury us." Her eyes locked on the horizon, daring the valley to defy her. For the first time, silence felt less like a tomb, more like witness. Evelyn took one last step forward, the horizon glowing faint with dying sun. Daniel groaned softly, but his arms still clung to her, their bond unbroken despite ruin. She whispered, voice sharp with resolve, "The snow hides the bones, but not the fight." Her words cut through silence, the final strike against a world that forgot. Behind them, the valley lay quiet, predator and prey both erased beneath white beauty. Before them, nothing promised survival, only more struggle, yet they walked still. Their echo was not in victory, but in the refusal to vanish quietly. As the sun sank, Evelyn's eyes burned with defiance, carrying the truth that survival is not mercy, but will. The valley would remember nothing, but the audience could never forget.